What's up, airplane collectors? Welcome to another model review. It's your host Ray. In today's video, I'll be reviewing the Aviation 400 Air Canada Boeing 777-300 extra range. This review is being made at the request of one of my subscribers. If you see a model in my collection you'd like me to review, drop that down below in the comments and I'll get the review started as soon as I can. So I'll talk about the box, then the model, and at the end of the video I'll give my personal opinion about whether or not I recommend the model to other collectors, and that'll be the review. So here's the box. Box art looks pretty interesting. I'll show you on the box now. So here's the front, bottom, right side, top, left side, and I should have here's the back side. Not very much to see back here, unlike other models I've seen before. Once you open up the box, you get the model and a very cheap plastic display stand. This stand is extremely difficult to assemble, requiring a lot of force to attach the base to the stand part to the base part, and the stand doesn't even fit on the model, so you're gonna have to sand down this part of the stand so it can fit on the model. So that was rather disappointing to see. I'll give you guys a quick 360 of the model so you can get a good look around it. The fuselage is 18 centimeters long, the wingspan is 16 centimeters, and the model from the ground to the top of the vertical stabilizer is 5 centimeters tall. Accurate to 1:400 scale, and it's pretty big. Model is also pretty heavy because it's made primarily out of die-cast metal. I'll start the review at the front of the aircraft. Here you can see the front section of the fuselage. The nose shape looks pretty solid. The nose cone section here might be a little bit too sharp in terms of the rounded parts here. I'm not 100% sure though. But overall the nose shape looks pretty solid. Cockpit window printing looks good. It's a very dark gray on top of the black raccoon mask, which looks really nice. I have seen a few examples with messed up noses, so this model may or may not have messed up examples. I'm not 100% sure, but nose shape quality control was rather questionable on this release. Moving down the fuselage, you can see a lot of printed detail, all of which looks really good. There's printed detail everywhere to go around. I noticed here on the wing, or close to the wing root right here, there was a bit of a paint application issue as well as a bit of a mold issue. This little depression spot here, it's not present on the other side of the aircraft from what I remember, so I'm not sure what happened. And the paint application issue here also makes it much more defined than it would be. Continuing down the fuselage, I don't have any other complaints aside from that. Lots of detail, and there's nothing to complain about. All of it looks pretty good. Here's the vertical stabilizer. Vertical stabilizer looks pretty good. Printed detail on it looks good. Air Canada logo looks pretty good. No complaints on it at all. Lots of molded detail on the rudder as well. I'll show you the right side of the aircraft. It's essentially identical to the left side, and it has everything about the left side going for it. It's pretty good in terms of printed detail. The little depression spot that I noticed by the wing root doesn't seem to be present on this side, so I guess that was a quality control issue exclusive to my model. Moving on to the wings. The wings on this model are very nicely detailed. There's lots of printed and molded detail on the wings. However, the molded detail appears, or it's very hard to see. Here you can kind of see that there's almost no molded detail, but once I reflect light off of it, you can see the details for the air brakes and the flaps. So it's very hard to see this molded detail from a distance. However, the printed detail makes up for it. There's printed detail throughout the entirety of the wing. All of it looks pretty good, and I really don't have any complaints on it. It looks pretty solid. Underside of the wing doesn't have any printed detail, but the molded detail down here is a bit more noticeable since there's not as much printed detail down here. The wingtips on this model are very nicely done. There's clearly defined edges to the raked wingtips, and there's no scratches or dents or anything wrong with either side, so the wingtips are very nicely done. Now for the rear section of the aircraft. Back here there's a ton of detail both on the fuselage and on the horizontal stabilizers. You can see a decent amount of printed detail on the horizontal stabilizers, and there's a bit of molded detail on them as well. Overall, very nicely done. The APU looks fantastic. It's molded very nicely and painted clearly as well, so you can see a clearly defined APU exhaust. The other side looks pretty good, however there's really not that much to show, so there's not that much detail back there. But on the left side, it looks very nice. Bottom section of the horizontal stabilizers aren't really as detailed, but on the fuselage you can see some very clearly defined APU access doors. The engines on this model are made very nicely. Their shape is good, detail on them is good. The pylons look good. Looks like there's a bit of an issue with the printing on these access doors. I'm not sure if they're supposed to be pointed downward like that, or check the backs out. Yeah, I'm not sure those are supposed to be pointed downward like that, but that's just something I noticed. If they are, then they're represented like that on the model. Here's the fan blades. Fan blade detail in this model is unlike any other 1-400 scale aircraft I've seen. There is not only fan blade detail, but the spinner spirals are also painted, and of course, the fan blades spin. Rather hard to spin them though, but they do spin, and that's a very nice detail. There's a lot of printed detail on the engines themselves though, however that applies mostly to the underside. Here's the underside of the right engine. Looks pretty good, and you can even see a small Air Canada logo on the inside portion of the right engine. Here's the bottom of the aircraft. Here you can get a good look at the bottom part of the fuselage. Lots of printed detail down here, and there's not really any molded details that I can see. Or actually, yes, there is. There's a few indentations right by the display stand hole here. And there's this Air Canada logo right there. Looks pretty good. Overall, very nicely detailed, and I have no complaints. Now for aerial details, this model features a mixture of sat domes, antennas, and lights. The lights on this model are three-dimensional. There's one at the top of the aircraft here. It's painted red, and it's a small bump, and it's very nicely done. Very impressive detail for a 1-400 scale aircraft. Moving down the fuselage, we have one large antenna right here. Looks pretty good, no complaints about it. And moving towards the rear of the aircraft, we have a sat dome right here that is attached to the aircraft, and then we also have another small lump here that is molded into the aircraft, which is also defined by a printed line outlining the little bump. So very extremely highly detailed for a 1-400 scale aircraft. And there are also two antennas back here, both of which look pretty good. The bottom section of the aircraft has only two antennas and one light. The light is right next to the right inside of the Air Canada logo here, and it looks really good. It's a bit better than the one on the top. It's a reflective red color, and it's very clearly defined. It looks really nice. There's two antennas. There's one right by the landing gear, and there's one at the rear section of the aircraft, which actually has stripes on it, which is a very uncommon detail for a 1-400 scale aircraft. So the aerial features on this model are incredibly detailed. The same can be said about the landing gear in this model. The landing gear are painted a reflective gray color, and they pivot within a limited range. However, the range is accurate to the 777's capabilities. All of the wheels roll very smoothly, and they're very nicely detailed. No complaints on the landing gear. It looks really good. And moving on to the nose gear, same deal here. It doesn't pivot or anything because it doesn't in real life, but the landing gear wheels roll very smoothly. So the landing gear on this aircraft is also very nicely done. Here's a rather mediocre view of the front of the aircraft. Here you can see wing flex for both the main wings and the horizontal stabilizers. Those look really good, no complaints. Wing flex is accurate. The engine clearance to the ground, you can barely see that, but they come close, but they're accurate to the 777. And cockpit window printing and gear balance also looks pretty good. Everything looks symmetrical, and I have no complaints on that. And that concludes my review of the aircraft. Now time for my personal opinion. This aircraft is incredibly detailed, and even though quality control has a bit of fluctuation here and there, it's mostly remained consistent, so therefore I highly recommend this model to any collector who's interested. Very nicely detailed. Details on this model surpass many 1-400 manufacturers and even come close to some 1-200 models, which is quite ironic, but it's very nice. The included display stand is pretty bad, but the fact that it includes the display stand in the first place is nothing short of a miracle, so I really won't change my opinion based on the stand. So that's the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, feel free to drop a like and a comment down below. I always appreciate feedback. Check out my channel for more model airplane and siren content, and stay tuned for more model airplane and siren content. And that's all I got for you guys. Take care and see you in my next video.